I prefer a very lightweight system for my backpacking gear. That being said, some of my gear tends to be on the heavier side. I'm gonna go over 5 or 6 different types of gear or categories where I've found that I prefer the heavier item over the lighter choice. Last year, I tested both the X-Mid 1-Person Pro and the X-Mid 1-Person Solid. I used the Solid for my spring and fall trips, and I used the X-Mid Pro for my summer trips. And I've sold the X-Mid Pro. It all comes down to that I prefer having a more modular tent and having that double wall design versus the integrated or hybrid style of design where your inner is connected or built into the fly. When I'm dealing with rain or condensation and all of those things, I like to be able to pack up the inner, keep it dry with the rest of my gear, and put the fly on the outside of my bag in that big sort of mesh pocket. Overall, I've found that I prefer Sil Poly over DCF. Yeah, DCF is lighter and it's completely waterproof. It's noisy, it has a larger pack volume, and it's very expensive. The 1-Person Solid is about 10 or 11 ounces heavier than the 1-Person Pro, but it's half the price, and overall I find it performs better for the things that I need to do. A solid metal headlamp. Now there's tons of very lightweight lighting options out there. Over the years, I've just found that having a very reliable, durable headlamp is better for me. You know, I go out quite a lot. I like to have that reliable option just in my bag, ready to go all the time. I don't need to be thinking about, am I gonna pack the headlamp? Am I gonna pack just a little pen light? What am I gonna need? I just pack this one all the time. And when it comes to the fact that it's aluminum over plastic, I've broken every kind of headlamp on the market. The last straw was this black diamond headlamp, and the last time I used it, I was getting ready to go, and I haven't used it since then. I had to tape it shut because the little tab that snaps over and keeps it shut for the batteries just snapped getting ready for a trip, and I taped it shut, put some batteries in, got the job done. I got this in the fall of 2021, and it still basically looks brand new. You'll often hear people say, replace a bigger, bulkier knife with a small Swiss Army Classic or something similar like that, a little razor blade or whatever. I'm a knife person, and I almost always carry this folding knife on me. So it's just an Ontario Rat 2. It weighs 80 grams or something like that, 2.5 ounces, almost 3 ounces. So I have this in my pocket almost all the time. Yes, on certain trips, if weight was absolutely critical, I might leave it at home, but it's pretty rare. Ultimately, it's just a preference. I like having it with me. So even in the summer when I'm wearing shorts, I'll tend to carry a pair of long pants with me. I think having a good full coverage pair of pants with you all the time is almost an emergency item. Depending on the conditions, if it gets buggy or if I'm gonna start bushwhacking or anything like that, having some pants is a very important piece of gear. I opt for the kind that are slightly heavier than the really lightweight options that are on the market. Yes, you can get some very lightweight pants, shell pants from companies like Enlightened Equipment and things like that that weigh 2 ounces or 3 ounces. Mine weighs 6, 7, 8, 10 ounces, depending on the pants and what I'm doing. I just want something that's a bit tougher and that I know will stand up to some abuse. And that goes for a lot of my clothes. I'll opt for things that are a little bit tougher just because I do tend to do some bushwhacking. I tend to be off trail sometimes. I'm just not interested in shredding my gear all the time to save a few grams or ounces. The quilt versus sleeping bag. And without a doubt, going from a sleeping bag to a quilt is a very easy way to drop a pound and a half or more, depending on what model sleeping bag you have. I have some pretty light sleeping bags and I have a very light quilt. I'll use that quilt for certain times of the year. In general, just the 2 summer months, July, August, because the other months are just too unpredictable. I find that I end up getting in situations where the temperature drops below freezing pretty often. A sleeping bag that's the same temperature rating as a quilt is warmer, no question. It's kind of like saying you have a really well insulated house, but you don't have a front door. So if I compare my -6 degrees Celsius quilt to my -6 degrees Celsius sleeping bag, the sleeping bag is about 10 ounces heavier, which is a fair amount of weight. But what I get out of it is an extremely warm system that I can rely on. When I was first doing ultralight backpacking, there weren't that many lightweight, good options for sleeping pads on the market. So you were basically stuck with using a thin foam pad. For years, my standard ground pad was a 5mm Evazote pad from Mech. Somewhere around 2011 is when I got my first Thermarest X-Lite, and I never looked back. The X-Lite is so warm and so thick, you just can't compare the type of sleep that you get on that kind of mattress versus a foam pad. Now, there's a lot of mattresses that are comparable to the X-Lite on the market right now. But I will say this, you can get a lighter mattress if you drop down to an R value of 2, but I just don't think it's worth it. If you look at products even within the Thermarest line, the Ultralight is an R value of 2 or something like that, and the X-Lite is an R value of 4.7, almost 5. It's a very warm ground pad. Having that high R value means that your sleeping bag or quilt, whatever you choose to use, performs at its rating. If you go down to an R value of 2, on some nights you'll be fine, but the night that it gets cold out, you're gonna feel it. I've slept on the X-Lite in below freezing weather, on snow and ice, and you feel the warmth from the pad. So you're literally, your back feels warm. You're getting the most out of all of your gear by having that little bit of a weight penalty. I go for the higher R value, and it's also a bigger pad because I'm a bigger person, and I find that I sleep better having that big rectangle. My X-Lite weighs something like 20 ounces, whatever that is in grams. And yes, you can get lighter options on the market, but for me, I just think that the weight is worth it. Even though I'm picking options that are slightly heavier than others, my base weight is still between 10 and 12 pounds, which is pretty light because the choices I'm making are fairly lightweight to begin with, but I'm also going very minimal in terms of the number of things that I bring. At the end of the day, it's not just about having a low number on a spreadsheet, it's about having good quality gear that can handle a bunch of situations and lets you go out and do what you want to do on your next backpacking or hiking trip.